When people watch my Schizoid videos for the first time, one of the common comment themes that I get is they express surprise at my presentation because I'm not that super severe, withdrawn, monotonous stereotype that they're expecting. I have what's called a covert presentation. It's like masking in autism. In autism, females are usually better at masking than the males. And I think in Schizoid, there might be a bit of that too, because even the DSM mentions that it seems to affect males more severely. So, I mean, there's probably a lot of factors that made me this way, and I wasn't always this way. I used to be much more overtly schizoid, withdrawn when I was younger. I'm older than I look. I've had a lot of time to, work on seeming more social than I am and more expressive and whatever. And people can argue about whether they believe covert is a thing. I don't care. It doesn't change the fact of how I am and what I go through. There are some comments that criticize, and they're like, oh, how could you be schizoid when you act like that? But then there are other ones where people are like, oh, you have schizoid, but you're able to do this, well done, and, aren't you functioning well, kind of thing. So this, it could go either way. But no, what I want to talk about with covert, like, it seems like a good thing, right? Because if I can act reasonably normal and fit in with society on some level, you'd think I would function better. But I've got to say, there are some downsides. Now, I'm kind of doing this video off the top of my head. Before starting, I did make some dot points, but they're not very detailed, so I'm going to ramble a bit. But, these are just some thoughts that I've had recently about the downsides of being covert schizoid. Because, when someone's severely schizoid, I think it's pretty obvious why that's a problem, because, the person finds it hard to socialize, and it can be distressing for those around them who don't understand why they're acting the way they are, and it can make moving through the world difficult. And I think more severely schizoid people get diagnosed faster because it's so obvious that something is up and something's preventing them from, functioning in the world the way that we're expected to function. With covert, and I didn't even write this one down, but like getting diagnosed late kind of sucked because I spent decades like thinking something's not quite right, and they say it's just depression, but I don't have the same experience as other people with depression, and they, nothing's working, and I spent a long time wondering what the heck. I don't understand why this is such a struggle. And I think also because I didn't realize that I had a personality disorder, which is a bit more full on than just having depression. Maybe that got in the way of me recognizing trauma. But yeah, no, also like when you haven't been diagnosed and you try and get treated for depression, and people make the assumption that you just have stock standard depression, they will treat you in a way that doesn't work well for schizoids. They try and push the whole emotional connection stuff, or you just need more friends kind of stuff. And it's like, that's not my problem. I'm not interested in that. You're not going to be able to engage me on those standard social things. So I didn't really get any psychological help that fit with how my mind works. So that sucked, and not understanding why that wasn't working out for me, blah, blah, blah. So slower diagnosis, that's a downside for being covert. But no, what's actually on my list? No, one of the things is people think I'm nicer than I am. Now, this is a mixed bag, because people perceiving you as nice can be helpful in some ways, because if they like you, they're more likely to, I don't know, help you or whatever. But on the other hand, it can lead to higher social expectations because they think you're so nice, and so they can ask you stuff, and maybe they want to hang out with you more. And as a schizoid, like for a non-schizoid person who has normal social needs, maybe they want people to perceive them as nice and to want to hang out with them. For me, though, I quite often find it a bit stressful when people really want to hang out with me a lot more than I have the energy to. Like, I can hang out occasionally. There are some people I find easier to hang out with than others. But I'm pretty sure I let people down when they want to hang out with me and I'm just like, no. So that's a difficulty. Like, if I was really overtly schizoid and people didn't think, oh, she's so nice and open and whatever, they wouldn't be bothering me in that way. So yeah, mixed bag, because you do need people to help you sometimes in life. But on the other hand, it does lead to more social pressures, and I'm not always sure like how to navigate that, because on the one hand I realize that to fit in or whatever, I should go and socialize with people, but there's sort of a dread, and then depending on who it is, what we're doing, how long we're doing it for, I can find the engagement quite difficult and tiring, and sort of like go about it like, why did I agree to come to this? When is it going to be over, kind of thing. Now, if we're working towards something like a band, I find that easier. But if we're just hanging out and chatting for no particular reason about no particular thing, that's like probably one of the worst kinds of. I just can't. There needs to be something specific. Like, even if we're seeing a movie, because then we don't have to talk too much and I can focus on the movie, but it seems like I'm being social. Or going to an exhibition, there's something else to look at, something I might be interested in. But yeah, if it's just like going to a pub and talking, if it's a live music gig, I can watch the music. But if it's just talking about stuff and most people aren't interested in the things that I'm interested in, and yeah, so there's higher social expectations. There's also like one of the things that happened in high school is I had a friend who was quite clearly going through like some kind of depression type stuff, and like the way that I did things at school is like I'd have one friend at a time, really. Like, there was the friendship group, but I'd mostly hang out with one person at a time, and then I guess they'd want a bit more than that and move on to move on, and someone else would come in my orbit and I'd hang out with them. So like I struggled to do the group socializing thing. But so at one point, the girl that I was mostly hanging out with, she was going through some depression stuff, and but like very obviously, at the same time, I was going through some pretty serious depression stuff too. But I kept it in, because being schizoid, you don't show it. And there was a lot of pressure on me from my peers and all that to be comforting this friend. And meanwhile, I was suffering so much, and I found that really difficult. So there's things like that where, like, because I don't show how I actually feel, people don't realize how badly I'm doing. Whereas someone who does show, I'm expected to be supportive and all that, when actually I need a fuck ton of support myself. Although I've often been in denial of it. I spent a lot of my life being like, I don't need anyone. And it's only like as I've gotten to this, I'm practically a vampire at this point, because I'm that much older than I look. I've reached an age where I can kind of see like, yeah, I've been in denial. The schizoid stuff and all that is sort of telling me that I don't need people, but I know we're a social species, and I can see where my life is fucked up now, and I realize I do need that, and I think I've spent more time sort of trying to understand the emotions that I've suppressed. So when I talk about me needing support in the past, I didn't know that at the time, and I wouldn't have been able to express it anyway. Another thing is, so that was then. Nowadays, another thing that happens is if people get too friendly with me, they start expecting me to be supportive of just like anything they do. And this is a problem I had dating as well, because I did make an effort. People were like, oh, you just need to meet the right person, you just need to give it a go. And, I was always sort of like, why am I like this? So I tried things. And every guy that I was in a proper relationship with, like, I tried the internet dating thing, met a few guys, like, for lunch or whatever, and it was just like, I don't understand why I'm here. The ones I was actually in relationships with, I had 3 relationships, and there was always a point, sometimes very early, where they'd be like, you're not actually interested in me or anything I do. And that's like, yeah, I tried to, what are you woofing at? I hope that's not people coming home, they're supposed to be at lunch. I think he's just woofing randomly. See, I can't make these videos if someone's around. This is another thing, is like people think I'm functioning well, but that's because I'm alone with dog who can't understand what I'm talking about. Anyway, no. So like when I was dating, all the guys would pick up at some point that I just don't really care. Sounds cold and harsh to say that, but then again, I'm schizoid and I am cold and harsh when I feel comfortable enough to be honest about it, which I do talking to a web camera. Stop assuming that I'm talking to you, person on the other end of the internet. I'm talking to an inanimate object and it's this webcam. Oh dear. But yeah, no, so people, like, you know, in a relationship, the guys, they wanted support. Like, they wanted me to like them, and be interested in the things that they were doing. And I really tried to understand what that was about and to sort of try and be interested in their shit, but I just couldn't do it. They were very interested in my shit, probably because they were they were more normal socially, I think, than I am. They had their own issues in different ways, but you know, that part of the human experience they had, which I don't, or don't seem to. I could still be in denial. I'm aware of that possibility, but so far I find it really hard to be interested in other people. Maybe I'll be interested in like something someone's done and be like, I wonder if I could do that. But it still comes back to me in a way. Anyway, yeah, so people seeking validation from me, for example, I can't honestly do that, and I don't like to be dishonest. So when people ask me to applaud them or whatever, it's hard. There are some situations where I will just do it, but then there are other such situations where I can't. I think, like, you know, maybe if I'm at a gig seeing a friend's band or something and maybe I'm not into it, I would be like clapping. I'm more likely to cheer if I actually liked the music though. But if it's someone like one-on-one asking me for validation, do you want me to like bullshit you, or do you want me to be honest? Like, I would rather be honest. Yeah, and then, you know, if they don't like my response, it's just awkward. So but that's what people expect from me because I seem so nice and so engaged and so pleasant. Yeah. Another thing, like, with all this social expectation stuff is sometimes I accidentally agree to more than I want to do. Just because, like, I'm trying to manage myself in the moment, and trying not to feel uncomfortable. I mean, I'm not sure, because this isn't something I do on purpose. It's subconscious, and I think when I'm in social situations, maybe there's a bit of dissociation involved where I'm just, like, almost on autopilot. I don't, like, you know, later, or even watching myself, I'd be like, why are you saying this? You don't actually want to do this. So, for an example, what's an example is, like, you know, someone has some kind of a problem, and I might suggest a solution and be like, oh, I could do this for you. And maybe I have the skills to do whatever it was, but I don't actually want to. It's just like, you know, there's a person talking to me, they've got a problem, I've got a solution, and my brain's like, what if I helped you with this? And then if they take that up, I feel like I have to do it even if it's something I really didn't want to do. I don't know. I think that's like part of the mask, like the covert schizoid. Instead of expressing what's really going on with me, which is I don't want to deal with your shit, instead of expressing that, there's this sort of like mask, or the autopilot just steps in and is like, the easiest way to get through this interaction is to pretend I give a shit. So I realize there's like, I'm probably saying some paradoxical stuff, and it does get confusing. Like, it's hard to assess your own psychology, I think, because you're still in it, and it can be hard to separate yourself. But so what happens with me is, like, increasingly I can separate myself from my experience and sort of observe what I'm doing, but at the same time I do have the like actual experience I'm going through, and so my brain gets into like these different modes. I think that's more like the dissociation stuff, which is, I know a lot of schizoids experience dissociation, but it's not technically part of the criteria. as far as, like, you know, at least how it is these days. Maybe one day they'll add dissociation, I don't know, but they actually want to erase schizoid as a label, which is frustrating because it would make it a lot harder to find information. I get what they're trying to do, but, you know, reduce stigma and, you know, everyone is a little bit different, so maybe we should make it more of a spectrum and not put these hard labels. But then, like, when you fit a criteria, it's hard to... And I think it is a bit about feelings, like, going on a tangent here, you know, I think one of the reasons that autism has sort of gotten this huge profile is because it's not a personality disorder, and people who are not schizoid and who are sensitive to what they perceive as criticism, I think they're more likely to think that if you diagnose them with a personality disorder, you're attacking their personality. They're sensitive to that word, and I'm like, no, but that's how it is. Like, I'm not upset that my personality has issues. Like, that's just a reflection of where I'm at. And, you know, disorder, the only reason you think disorder is bad, like, if you want to remove stigma, you should just stop considering disorder to be a bad thing. It's just a sign of a struggle you have. It doesn't mean you're bad. But no, people would rather change words and obfuscate. But anyway, no, hang on. Let me get back on topic, I'm sorry. Another problem with being covert schizoid is that people assume that I function better than I do. And this comes back to people who comment on my videos being like, oh, you have schizoid, but you seem like you're so energetic, and you seem so expressive, and you seem like you're doing really well, and you're functioning better than the rest of us. And I actually had a comment like this recently. Hi, if you're watching. The thing is, I actually think there are overt schizoids who are doing much better than me in life. I think there are a few reasons for this. One is if you have really strong schizoid symptoms, they are protecting you from all the shit in the world because you feel even less than I feel. I think I'm probably on the milder end of schizoid, and that's probably helped me become covert. I'm still severe enough that it's a disorder, though, because I do experience enough distress. I think people might have schizoid traits, but they're not bothered and they don't bother other people. Like, it's not just about whether or not it bothers you, because I know a lot of schizoids are like, I'm fine the way I am, but the way that you act actually does frustrate, for example, your family who might want to connect with you, but you keep pushing them away. Like, it's distress isn't just about you, so let me make that clear. Also, like, if you can't function in normal society, it's kind of a disorder thing as well. So yeah, traits, very mild. Then there's sort of me, covert, I think, and then there's sort of more severe, you know, the real stereotypes. I think it depends also on what the cause of your schizoid is. I'm running with a theory that the people who are more severe are more likely to have a biological reason for schizoid, because schizoid can be pre-morbid to schizophrenia. It has a lot of things in common with the negative symptoms of schizophrenia. So, you know, like the positive symptoms of schizophrenia are the ones that are more dramatic, that more people know about, for example, hallucinations, paranoia, whatever. The negative symptoms of schizophrenia are the things that are taken away, like you don't feel as much, and so on, like the things that are actually more schizoid. And so if you have more of a biological one that could be pre-morbid to schizophrenia, schizoid first, then schizophrenia, like it develops in that way, maybe you won't get to the schizophrenia, but maybe you're just sort of in that constant pre-morbid that never really goes anywhere. Okay, so maybe that's a biological way, and maybe that's why you're more severe, because the negative symptoms of schizophrenia look very much like severe schizoid. Okay, in my case though, I think there is some predisposition, maybe biology, but maybe like traits I've inherited from my parents. But I think my schizoid was very much influenced by trauma. Glass child trauma, I've explained it elsewhere. Where was I going with this? Sorry, I'm sniffling a bit. Assumptions about functioning. Okay. If you have trauma-based schizoid and you're a severe schizoid, the whole point of the schizoid is like as a defense mechanism against whatever you went through to make you that way. So I had the glass child trauma, which means my parents focused more on my disabled brother than me, kind of saw through me, assumed I was stronger than I was, except, being made out of glass. So being made out of glass, you seem strong, people see through you, but actually you can break quite easily. And so the schizoid is, I guess, to try and stop me from breaking. So if I don't feel anything, I can't have my feelings hurt, right? Like, it's that sort of idea. And so if you're more severely schizoid, what I'm trying to say is your defense mechanisms are probably stronger, whereas I've become covert over time. And because I've been very curious about my own state of mind, possibly also being female, and females are more likely to be like, I don't know, is it emotionally engaged or something like that? I think, yeah, like, I've become more aware of my suffering. Also, I do have comorbid depression. But one of the things that makes me think that a lot of overt schizoids might have it might be functioning better than me, is a lot of them will leave comments on my videos being like, why don't you get a night guard job? Implying that they have night guard jobs. And there are schizoids who get those kinds of unsocial jobs, working at hours or in jobs where they aren't around people a lot, and they have a job. They can support themselves. They can afford to live on their own and just go through life, in that schizoid way of like, yeah, keeping to myself, things are fine. I currently am not working. For the past few years, I've only had a casual job, 1 day a week usually, maybe 1.5 when I was doing a bit better. I was also doing a little bit of work from home at some point, but that was just like an hour here and there. But I've gotten to a point where I'm currently not able to work. There was a period a few years back where I was also not able to work. Partly a depression thing, I guess, but it's sort of, when you look at the outcomes, yes, I seem expressive on camera, and yes, there's like things that I seem to do that make it look like I'm functioning well, and maybe I can function better in like a social situation for a short period of time. But when it comes to actually living life and functioning in life and doing the things that you need to in life as an adult, I'm living at home with my parents and my disabled brother. I'm really screwed up at the moment. Can't work, can't support myself, can't move out. I'm not even sure if I lived alone whether I could be bothered to go and buy food. I mean, I suppose I'd have to at some point, but there's a lot of like life stuff that I'm not sure how well I would handle. Now, to be fair, my parents don't really give me a chance to figure that out, because they kind of just automatically do a lot of stuff. And I think having the disabled brother, they're already doing that all for him. So like, if I need clothes washed, I just chuck it in the basket with everything else and they'll wash it because they got to wash his stuff anyway. So there's some things about my situation like that. But yeah, I'm not functioning in life. There's a lot of things when I think about adulthood and independence, it's overwhelming and I don't know how I could do that. So people assume that because I seem like I can be more sociable, they assume that I'm functioning in life, and I'm not. I had a really bad night last night. I mean, I probably won't post this today, but by the time you see this, I'll probably have posted it on Patreon. And I am very concerned that I may need to go to hospital at some point, and I may not be entirely in control of certain dark decisions I may make one day. So, yeah, I think I got through all my points already. Milder or reduced schizoid. Yeah, it's a less effective defense against emotional pain, and I think as I've gotten older and more mature, it's harder for me to pretend I don't feel anything. Like I think realizing I have trauma as well has probably made my condition worse, because the whole point of blocking off trauma is so that it can't hurt you. And then now I know what the trauma is, but I'm still living in basically the same situation with my parents and my disabled brother. And yeah, I'm not doing well. And I know I should probably do things like move out, and maybe that would make it easier for me. But I'm just that pessimistic about my ability to look after myself. Other schizoids do seem able to live on their own and, you know, make it through life, and some of them will just be at peace if they're not around people. I don't experience that. Like, you know, being on my own would be fine, but I need to still be doing something. I can't just like sit at home and read books or whatever. Like, I feel like I need to be doing more. Maybe that's something about my, whatever my personality was before the trauma, like whatever my more innate nature was. I think there's some part of me that wants more, but I'm not so in touch with it, and it's not strong enough to break through what I go through. Anyway, so I think like covert, it looks like I'm doing okay sometimes. And yeah, I can be like, hey, and expressive and smile and put some variation in the tone of my voice, but it's like, it's not like I'm trying to do it on purpose. But there is a lot that it's hiding at the same time. And I'm not doing well in life. And I haven't been doing well in life for a long time. I think in my adult life, the best time in my life was actually when I was on antidepressants and I just didn't realize that I was losing a lot of weight. Like, I was properly underweight then, whereas now I'm on the low end of healthy. In theory, anyway, it depends on who you ask, but I'm pretty sure I'm on the low end of healthy these days, and I've managed to maintain that. But yeah, no, I think probably coming off antidepressants might have been a mistake at that time, but I was physically withering away a little bit. And yeah, I think I was also dissociating more at the time. And since then, I feel like my life ended in 2016. And I feel like I haven't really got it back. Like, I've really tried. And sometimes I've felt better. I mean, it could just be that today I'm really not doing so well with the depression. Like, I'm not feeling it as an intense depression today, but it is coloring everything. And maybe that makes it harder for me to remember anything good about the last few years. But, you know, I went to uni, that got me out of the house. But since then, I've kind of just sat at home. I've done a few things, like, you know, I've written some music, I've done the odd performance here and there, but I feel like there's no momentum to my life, and I'm very stuck and unhappy, pointless, everything's meaningless, and I feel trapped. I feel like there's nothing I can really do to fix my life. Maybe there is, and maybe I'm just being pessimistic. So this is where I'm in a particular state of mind right now, and I'm trying to sort of also separate objectively and think, what's really going on here? Am I actually this fucked in my life? Or is that just how I feel right now? And it's difficult. But yeah, anyway, getting back to the point, with covert schizoid, people think I'm doing better than I am, and I'm clearly not. If I was, you know, I know not all schizoids are able to work and support themselves and whatever, but I'm actually in that category of people who can't function in the world right now. Maybe one day I'll figure it out, but for a long time I haven't been able to function in the world that we live in. Other schizoids can find a place, even if it's not the normal place. They find a place where they feel at least content and get on with life. I am not in that state, and so yeah, when people assume that I'm functioning well, it's kind of an illusion. And you've got to remember, I'm talking to a webcam. I'm not talking to thousands of people on the internet from my perspective. I'm just talking to a webcam. And then I upload it to YouTube, and numbers come in showing me that people are watching, but I'm still disconnected from that fact. I don't even know most of the people who watch. And if I do know them, I don't know that they're watching unless they comment, and then I start feeling a bit awkward, I gotta say. I'm doing better these days, but it was really hard for me to get my head around the idea that people in real life might be watching my videos. Because I think I kind of came to the internet to escape my real life. Anyway, yeah, so people, because I have covert schizoid, I was diagnosed late, which made it harder to understand myself, harder to get treatment, harder to be taken seriously. That's another thing that I've mentioned in other videos. And I think also on Patreon I made a public post about my psychiatrist. Was that public? I don't even know. But yeah, so late diagnosis, not being taken seriously in treatment, not being treated in the right kind of a way. I mean, it's hard to treat schizoid, but there are things that maybe you shouldn't do and things that are not going to work, like trying to push me to be social. Then there's the way people perceive me. They think I'm nicer than I am, which has some good things, but on the other hand, they have higher social expectations of me, and that puts a lot of pressure on me, and I do get stressed. I may not show it, but I do get stressed. And will withdraw, and I actually don't go out that much. I keep to myself a lot. So yeah, they assume I'm more social than I am. They don't realize that I find it easier to socialize if there's something other than socializing to do. I also tend to agree to more than I want to do because I'm just trying to get through the moment, and autopilot makes me agree to things that I didn't mean to, just because it's, I don't know, it's a confusing thing. Maybe that's what I would do if I wasn't so screwed in the head. Maybe I would offer those things genuinely, and maybe that's the part of me that is saying that. But when I think about how I actually experience things, I'm like, why did I say that? Yeah, and then there's assumptions about how I function, and also being less severely schizoid, I have less defenses against the things that screw me up, get me down. Sounds like I'm writing song lyrics there, whoops. But yeah, you know, like especially not being in denial now. I mean, that's also partly some of the dissociation no longer helping, but I think it's also a schizoid thing. If I had stronger schizoid defenses, I wouldn't feel as much, and it wouldn't hurt as much. But now that I've broken down that barrier, I can't unbreak it. So I'm kind of stuck in this situation, and it sucks. And I hope that made some sense, and there's probably more downsides to being covert. And there's probably plenty of upsides, but that's not for today's video. This one's gone on long enough. Stuff and things, join my cult and so on, all that kind of bullshit, I tell you. Bye.